Hey, so we finally have a script for the Batman Part 2. Matt Reeves announced it just the other day, and it has a lot of us fans speculating what might be in that script, what's happening in the sequel. Can you guys believe it's been 3 years since the first film released? That is kind of harrowing thought.
The sands of time are moving on, paisano.
And since we still have over 2 years to go, I know, until a sequel comes out, I'd love to cover a couple of things that I would love to see in either part 2 or in a continuation of the Batman saga past, maybe into a third movie and another TV series. So these are just going to be some of my top picks for things I would like to see in a sequel. And hey, I'm making a Batman fan film loosely set in the Reeves verse, so make sure you have subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of the cool updates I have on that one coming up soon. Let's get started. Okay, so I think the first thing that I would love to see that's kind of been on my mind is I would love to see some opponents for Batman to go up against that provide a little bit more of a physical challenge to him. In the Batman, he's really only squaring up against random street thugs or Riddler goons or some security guard stuff. And again, this is still a very early in his career Batman, and Matt Reeves said his fighting style was very much described as like a kind of street fighter brawler, so he is probably missing a little bit of the finesse of a more highly tuned fighter, I think, at this point in his career. I know it's very popular to hark back to this footage from the Batman Arkham Origins trailer where he's going up against Deathstroke. This kind of fighting, I would love to see something like this, but in the Batman universe, and I don't necessarily think I want to see Pattinson square up with Deathstroke or anything like that, but we just need someone to kind of give him a little bit more of a run for his money. Now that can be incorporated in a number of different ways, but obviously, the easiest way to do that is with a villain that is quite physically imposing, someone like Bane. I don't necessarily think I want to see Bane in the sequel, I'm just saying, that's the first one that came to mind off the top of my head. A group that I would love to see developed, potentially in either the Batman Part 2 or the Batman 3, would be the Court of Owls. Now, I'm a huge fan of this storyline, and I love the idea that the corruption that has kind of built up in Gotham goes far deeper than Bruce could ever imagine. And I think the argument against having the Court of Owls is that it might be retreading a little bit too much of the same kind of, oh, Gotham's corrupt storyline that we saw in the Batman Part 1. But I think if it's done correctly, it can show just how broken Gotham as a city is and how kind of doomed it's been to be under the boot of evil, I suppose you could say, for generations upon generations, which makes Batman overcoming that even that much more significant. So I think there's definitely a way to do it. And of course, we had this sort of loose Court of Owls tease potential in the Penguin, this is the courtroom, and then these curtains, everyone's saying they look like owls, and they do. That seems reasonably intentional, unless the set design department did that accidentally, but I highly doubt that in these kind of productions. Normally everything is really heavily thought out, curated. There's a real eye for detail when these sets are being put together. So what do you think? I think those are owls. And Matt Reeves has also hinted at the fact that he wants to take the corruption a little bit deeper, I think, in the sequel. I'll try and find the quote and throw it up on the screen here, but there's definitely some hints and teasers that potentially the Court of Owls does kind of fit into this narrative that Matt Reeves is crafting. Now, whether or not that works in a Part 2 context, I don't know. It probably would work better in a Part 3 or final film, like Batman kind of finally overcoming the full corruption that's been rotting Gotham from underneath for generations, and that could be a really cool climax of the series, but that kind of conflicts with the next thing that I would really like to see in the sequel or sequels, and that would be an adaptation of, or fleshing out of, Batman's rogues gallery as a whole to kind of lead into a potential Arkham Asylum type film. Now, typically in Batman films, it's very kind of villain of the week, and I don't mean that in a negative context. I just mean that it's very hard to have villains that are established as a long-standing threat to Batman or Gotham, because you need to kind of wrap up the story succinctly in a 2-hour film where you've got to introduce a threat, have Batman struggle with the threat and then overcome the threat, and then that's it. And normally these films don't get more than 3 films. So it's really hard to kind of establish Batman as a player and his villains and all these kind of relationships that technically within the comics and the TV shows have just been around for years. It's just this constant struggle between Batman and his villains. So now the Batman is already kind of sort of starting to jump that problem a little bit with the fact that Pattinson's Batman has already been active for longer than, let's say, Bale's Batman, who a lot of people don't realize was really only active for about 18 months across the course of his whole trilogy. I think it might have even been slightly less time than that. But again, in Batman Begins, it's really just, he shows up, saves Gotham, and then it jumps to in the Dark Knight. I think it's only maybe a year later, tops. And then of course, in the course of that film, he retires at the end, and then there's the 8-year time gap, and then he comes back and saves Gotham again. So he really wasn't established as a key part of Gotham's lore, I want to say. He was a legend within Gotham's mythos, of course, and repeatedly was, there for the city, but he never became established like Batman is, again, in the comics as one of Gotham's key figures. Again, 18 months is such a short period of time to be active. Whereas the Batman has kind of already, again, flipped that script where Pattinson's Batman's already been active in the city for at least 2 years now. And I think there will be a tiny bit of a time jump going forward into the sequel as well, which I think we're gonna see. So I would really love to see them be able to flesh out more of this kind of ongoing relationship between Batman and Gotham and Batman and his rogues gallery, and it's not just here's a villain for a 2-hour movie that technically takes place across the course of a week and then they're dead. And with the Penguin show that's come out, I think it really establishes the fact that this universe is ripe for kind of really fleshing out these stories and these characters and these relationships. Now, off the back of that, I think we might be getting a season 2 of the Penguin. Initially, before the show came out, they were all saying, or the production was all saying, it's a one and done, it's just like a mini series, we're not doing a second one. But then I think after the massive success of the Penguin, they started looking at it and being like, ooh, we might be able to, you know, do something with this here. People really like this. It was massively critically acclaimed. I love it. I want to talk more about the Penguin in another video, but recently Lauren LaFranc has come out and said, yep, they're trying to find a way to do it. Matt Reeves has even been on record saying, yeah, if they can find a way to do it, they'll definitely tell more stories. And then I think as well, there's been reports of another spin-off show. So with the spin-off shows in conjunction with the films, I really truly think that the Batman universe and the sequel and then the threequel, the third film, whatever you want to call it, has the potential to really create a much more rich and layered kind of lore and background for Robert Pattinson's Batman. Now, I've kind of diverted a little bit from my point here where I said I kind of wanted a Court of Owls situation happening in the third film. That's one option, but I also would kind of really love to see, and this ties into how I said I want them to build up like a deeply rich and layered backstory and relationship between Batman and his villains. And that's because I think it would be really, really cool to see an Arkham Asylum style film. Now think the Arkham Asylum games. It's basically where Batman goes into Arkham Asylum and then he's basically faced with all of his rogues who are, you know, locked in there, trying to kill him, orchestrated by Joker, of course, who we know is already in Arkham Asylum. Now that ties into another thing I want to see more of, which again, I'm kind of muddling all my points together here, but I'm sure you're following. I trust you guys. But yes, I really want to see more of the Joker in part 2 as well, or at least enough to establish the fact that he's kind of scheming behind the scenes, and I think that's kind of the intention behind the reason they even put that Joker tease in the first film, where he's like kind of like talking to Riddler and like making like friendships and connections in Arkham there. Matt Reeves talked about the fact that in early test screenings, without that kind of little Joker tease, it didn't track as well for the final of the film. Like, I think he says that there's no real reason for Batman to stay in Gotham if we don't know, or we can't see that trouble is already brewing behind the scenes. At least that's the way Matt Reeves puts it. I might insert it here because I think I'm butchering his words a little bit, but.
It was important for me at the end. I actually took the scene that's in the movie still out for a brief time, and we tested it, and I realized that for me, when Selina is talking to Batman at the end of the movie, and they're having their kind of very poignant goodbye because they're always going to be on the opposite sides of things, she says to him, you know this place isn't going to change. And when I took the scene out, the stakes of the scene changed because that scene shows you that when she says that, you've just seen it, and you see the two of them next to each other, and that's just one sort of example of how trouble in Gotham is never going to subside. There's always going to be somebody with a plan afoot. And so it changed the movie dramatically. So
I know people are not 100% set on the Joker's design. I quite like it, truthfully. Again, I think that's a bit of an unpopular opinion at this point. I really like what they're doing with it. I think it fits and think it will fit. I trust Matt Reeves to kind of tell it in a way that's going to work. And part of the reason I think they deleted this scene, which again, I really liked it. This scene works really well. It's kind of like the Joker trying to read Batman, Batman trying to read the Joker, I think, and it's this, I really like this interrogation scene. It's very different to what's been done, but I think a big reason why this was cut, aside from the fact that, again, it was just retreading a story beat that is already told in the film, is that I think they were potentially trying to get a gauge of audiences' reactions to this Joker. Do they like it? Do they not like it? So that if they need to, they can change the design or rework it. Because again, technically the scene was deleted, so in my head, I don't necessarily count it as canon. It didn't necessarily have to have taken place. And then the actual official look, or you know, the theatrical version of what we do see of Joker in the film was so obscured that they could feasibly change a lot of the design elements of that and get away with it. Anyway, I'm just rambling a lot to say that I would love to see more of the Joker's kind of build up in a part 2, and then potentially by the time we hit a part 3, there's this kind of Arkham Asylum breakout of sorts, but the only way that's gonna work is if there are enough established Batman rogues that are already locked up in Arkham for Joker to stage this kind of big like, oh, Batman, come in here and say hello, and then boom, everyone's broken out and, you know, it's the plot of Arkham Asylum. I think that would be really, really cool, but in like the Reeves verse. I think that is a wonderful finale to a Batman to this kind of Batman franchise or universe. Either that or Court of Owls, where Batman's like going up against the final boss of corruption in Gotham or something. So in order for that to work, though, I think they do need to kind of be a little bit more liberal with sprinkling in villains, which I think, again, so if we take into account the fact that we already have the Riddler in Gotham, the Penguin has basically been established as like the kingpin of Gotham at the end of, spoilers, sorry everyone if you haven't seen the Penguin, at the end of the Penguin, he's kind of set up as the main sort of crime lord watching over Gotham and controlling everything there. That just leaves us with another potentially 2 villains set up in the Batman Part 2, which would give us then 4, throw in the Joker, maybe throw in another one in a TV show there, you've got 6 people, and I think any more than that might be pushing it for like a ensemble type film if Batman's facing a lot of rogues. But again, this is just all my kind of really loose ideas rattled off the cuff. So let me know what you think. If you think that works, or if you think there's a better way to do it, by all means, chime in down below. Okay, now that I've rambled so much about potential plot lines and things for so long, I would love to see some more mental challenges for Batman. Now I know, or let me rephrase, I think I would like to see him be more mentally ahead of the curve. Because with the Riddler, he was sort of only really just kind of catching up to the Riddler constantly. He was never really ahead of the Riddler. And as we see, like he's always kind of one step behind until right at the end where he kind of just manages to get ahead of him enough to kind of pull Gotham back from the brink and having Bella Real assassinated and everything at Gotham Square Garden. So I think we should see Batman be a little bit more tuned in his ability to stay ahead of the curve. And that's learning from his mistakes and being able to kind of see things before they happen or adapt much quicker. Now, the thing that comes to mind when I'm talking about this in terms of adapting much quicker would be, everyone is very familiar with the Mr. Freeze boss battle in Batman Arkham City. I think that's a really, really awesome boss fight because it shows Batman both trying to, well, take down Freeze, but then Freeze adapts. But then after Batman, makes a specific combat move, Freeze will adapt to whatever move you've just done, whether you've come out of a vent, dropped from the ceiling, come out of a window, whatever. Freeze will usually set up some kind of countermeasure, which means you as the player then have to think of a different way to attack the situation and get back to Freeze. Because as you start to, use all these different methods, Freeze learns, you have to learn to adapt as well. A live action version of that kind of fight where it's just like constantly having to adapt to an opponent who is adapting to Batman, and the Batman's like, oh, okay, well that's not working, so I need to go here and do this, and then pull this lever to do this, and then that affects this, and then again, I'm kind of spitballing here, and it's not making a lot of sense, but again, I trust you guys are following. Now, we kind of see Batman take this approach of like learning from his mistakes in the first film, at least kind of loosely. It's very slow and it's very gradual, but I think there's an argument could be made to this is Batman trying to adapt his approach to fights and combat. So basically in that first subway fight, he approaches really slowly, basically just walks right in, starts wailing on people. The next big fight, he just rocks up at the door and says, let me in, I'm Batman. Walks straight in. Next time he shows up at the Iceberg Lounge, he at least kind of like does the old 1-2, so he's a little bit quicker in the door, and then by the final big battle, it's literally like he drops in on them within seconds. So I've heard it said that that could be a bit of an example of Batman trying to adapt to getting into a fight quicker, much more akin to, again, similar to the Arkham games, where you really want to just jump in and end the fight as quickly as possible. I understand there's a whole fear and intimidation factor as well with Batman again, so at certain points he is going to want to be slow and measured and really set the dread in his enemies' hearts. But I thought that was a cool little potentially intentional note, but again, it could just be, to do with the fact that the escalating stakes in the film requires Batman moves quicker, so who knows? But I thought that was interesting to think of as Batman's learning from his mistakes, as, just getting into a fight as quick as possible and starting it as quick as possible, because when he goes in slow, he might be at a bit of a disadvantage. All right, up next, I would really love to see some more scenes of Bruce training. And by some more scenes, I mean any scenes. I just think it's really cool to show Batman going through a bit of a training routine. Now, Matt Reeves actually talks about this in the director commentary of the film, and I'll put an insert of it over the top of me in a minute, but he says that in his mind, Alfred is a bit of a sparring partner for Bruce, so that Bruce would come home after a long night, and then he would, as his kind of workout, he would spar with Alfred. And I think that would be really cool to see in the sequel. And again, in this insert that I'll throw in, Matt Reeves literally says those words. If they do a sequel, which they are, he would love to see Batman and Bruce kind of do this little sparring training session. So
I had always wanted to see Bruce coming home after a night of being the Drifter and being Batman, and then his workout being sparring with Alfred, and that Alfred would be his sparring partner. And if we do more, that's one thing I'd love to see Rob and Andy do.
I'm pretty confident that's going to be in the sequel. Now, from an equipment point of view, I would like them to not change the suit as much as possible. So I probably could put this in a video called Things I Don't Want to See in the Batman. I just rephrased it here to get away with it in this video. So yeah, I really don't want them to change the suit all that much. I love it. I think it works. Some minimal changes would be fine. In my head at first, I was thinking, damn, of course they're going to change it because Warner Brothers is going to want to merchandise and sell more toys, et cetera, which is fair enough. I get it. You've got a brand to push and all that. But it was then pointed out to me that Bale's suit didn't change from The Dark Knight to The Dark Knight Rises. And again, Nolan is a creator who was very much like, if he wanted something, he would do it his way. And I think Matt Reeves is in a similar boat, especially with James Gunn giving him quite a lot of freedom as the head of DC Studios. So I think if Matt Reeves doesn't want to change the suit, he wouldn't change it just because Warner Brothers comes out and says, hey, we need to sell more toys. So I would like to see some like minor adjustments to it, because of course Batman's gear should always be evolving and changing and getting better and pushing the envelope. So, but yeah, I don't really want to see a redesign of the cowl or the suit too much. The only major thing I would like to see them change, and I think they will because based on some concept art and stuff that I'll throw up in a minute, is basically the glider. And I think that whole scene is awesome to show basically Bruce is, well, he's pushing the limits, he's testing the limits of the gear he already had. And again, as Matt Reeves has talked about in interviews, the wingsuit was really just something I think he threw into the suit as like, maybe I can use this from a Bruce's perspective, maybe I can use this in a pinch if I have to. If I get really, really stuck, maybe this could save me. Which it does, but it also almost kills him. So I think that is something he will learn from and try to develop more into this kind of glider, which is a bit of the concept art. This is from the concept art book of the Batman, which I have, which is awesome. You should get this. I don't have it on me right now, but I'll stick it up here. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff in here. Sorry, I lied. I went and pulled it out of my bookshelf. This is really, really cool and has a lot of stuff in it that I think they could potentially, I'll just flick through it really quick. This has a lot of really cool stuff in it that I think I would love to see them potentially adapt into a sequel. It breaks down a lot of the stuff that already happened in the film, but there's like cool like different versions of the Batmobile and the Batcycle and all this stuff. So on that note, with like the Batsuit changes, again, I think some minor changes to the Batmobile, his gear as a whole would be really cool. But the wingsuit especially, yes, I'd love to see them incorporate more of this glider design, which again, I think they probably will based on the absolute failure. Well, from an in-universe perspective, that landing was like a catastrophic failure, near-death experience for that man. And one of the last things I want to mention is something I'd love to see in the sequel is probably the soundtrack. And that would be the incorporation of, or more the development of the Batman theme. They're obviously going to hold on to that Batman score. That's incredible. I'm not worried about them getting rid of that. It's more just, I would love to see them incorporate this unreleased version of the soundtrack in the Batman. Now, I will put a snippet of it up here because I don't know whether this particular version of the Batman theme has been copyright ID'd by Warner Brothers or anything. So I'll leave a link to it down below, but put a snippet of it in here. This is just like a really, really awesome, much more heroic version of the Batman theme that we don't get in the film. So I think as Batman develops and comes more into his own as like Gotham's hero, savior, hope, whatever, all that stuff, this theme would fit really, really well. There's kind of two versions of it. There's this more like big swelling orchestra, and then there's this more slow kind of somber one as well. So I'll put a couple of snippets up on the screen of that now. Really, really cool. Check it out below. I would love to see them use that in the sequel. All right, that pretty much covers the main things that I'm excited for or would love to see in the continuation of both the Batman Part 2 and Part 3 and any kind of spin-off shows. But please, please, please let me know down below what you guys want to see, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. If you think I'm a complete idiot and all my ideas are stupid, also please tell me that. Love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please give it a like. Again, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the updates I have on my upcoming fan film. I say upcoming, it's still a long way away. This is all just cursory kind of footage I've put together and I'm working on to develop, but the whole process of that I'm gonna document on my channel anyway. So that's where you wanna be subscribed so you don't miss all the behind the scenes of this thing coming to life. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Enjoy the rest of your day and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.